Teachers of Reddit, what was the best lateness excuse you ever heard? I teach at a university, but this was from my high school years. My sister had just gotten her learner's permit that week and was driving to school for the first time, with me riding shotgun, required licensed 18-year family member etc. We came up to a very sharp intersection, something like a 135-degree hairpin turn, and the light turned yellow. My sister asked me what to do, and I said to stop for it, not liking the odds of a complete noob driver trying to do that turn at speed with me on the outside. She stopped. Quickly. The Mercedes behind us didn't. Everyone except the Mercedes was okay, but it gnarled traffic up pretty badly for a while. I drove the rest of the way to school. The crash totaled the Mercedes, but just dented the back cargo door in the Blazer we were in, and waited in line as student after student checked and late at the office with there was an accident on the way to school. Our excuse was we were the accident on the way to school. I teach preschool, so most of our excuses are detailed explanations of their bowel movements. Student walked in and looked a bit shaken. She told the class she had been hit by a car in a calm voice. English was her second language. Some people were confused and didn't think she had been a pedestrian struck by a vehicle. Not 5 minutes later, a police officer, paramedics, and the school nurse come in and usher her away. Apparently she got hit, got up off the ground, and sprinted into school. She had a minor concussion and we didn't see her for a week or so. Years ago I had a student come in who had missed the test the previous week. He said a while back he had been shot in the head and they were unable to remove the bullet and the previous week it had started shifting and he was in the hospital. Showed me the scans of his head and everything. Also, right now another student's friend let me know that he is in jail for a few weeks and asked me if I could please not drop him as he wants to stay in the class. I'm a tar and last semester a student emailed me saying he would be late to class because he got bit by a squirrel. There was also a different student who came to class with a baby turtle he found one day, on time though. It's possible I was teaching a class full of misfit Disney princesses. Genuine real excuse from an older student. I'm gonna be late every day because I'm on house arrest and walking to and from school I always have to stop at my girlfriend's and see my baby for a few minutes. I'm still trying to figure out why he had to be late, but maybe they put a time on his walks or something. Made me sad to see he had an ankle monitor and everything. I once signed my daughter in late to elementary school, and the parent before me had put UFO sighting and the reason for tardiness box. My school starts as early as 7:30 for some students. By public transit, 70% of my school qualifies for free/reduced lunch. It can be upwards of 2 hours to get to school. Those students have pretty legitimate reasons for lateness. I had one student a few years ago come late because his father had been murdered a few days earlier. I didn't expect him to show up at all, but his mom wanted him to go back to school. He just didn't get there on time. I had another late because her family had been evicted. Her parents had to work, so she was figuring out where to store their stuff. There was a traffic jam at the underground. Primary teacher here, teaching 11-year-olds. Kid comes in 30 minutes late because he was waiting for his lead shoes to finish charging. Turns out he was not lying and proceed to moonwalk over to his chair with his shoes flashing. Couldn't even be mad, it was too cool/stupid at the same time. Just heard this one last week. I'm sorry I was late. I have diarrhea. Truth or lie? You have to respect bathroom problems. Not a teacher, but in the 3rd grade I had to give a presentation in social studies class. We got to read our presentations off of a piece of paper. My dog ate half of that paper the morning I was supposed to deliver said presentation. I was hysterical because I didn't think my teacher would believe the my dog ate my homework excuse. My dad wrote a note for my teacher, please excuse does her dog really did eat her homework. I had a late student because he was getting a fine for tossing his cigarette butt on the ground right outside school. I teach adults. I remember this from 11th grade. Our history class was right after lunch. The class started with a quiz, so everyone was quiet. This big guy comes in like 15 minutes late. He goes over to our male teacher and whispers something in his ear. The teacher repeats it, but a little bit louder, so that it was audible. And the teacher says, "The cafeteria lady sold you an all-bread stromboli." Yes, the cafeteria lady had indeed sold him an all-bread stromboli, with no meat and cheese in it. So he had to go back and ask for another one, sit down and eat it, which was why he was late for class. Not sure if this applies, but a teacher was telling us about how important it was to hand in our essays until the end of the week. We had to hand 2 essays per week. While she was talking about how she wouldn't accept tardiness, there was this only one exception when she accepted it on the following week. Turns out a student was mugged on his way to school. He ended up losing his backpack with everything inside, including the essays, phone, wallet, socks and shoes. The student ended up going to talk to the teacher barefoot and crying, telling her how he tried even to persuade the assailant to let him get the essays out of his backpack, but to no avail. Call-ins, but still. Forgot to turn off my F********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** find my damn dentures. Those things are expensive are my favorites. Not a teacher, but this is one of my favorite stories to tell from freshman year of high school. Some kid showed up really late to class and told our teacher that he was in the bathroom and the trash can was on fire. We all sat there in disbelief and we all went to look out the door to see a bunch of smoke in the hallway. Then we see a security guard run out of the bathroom with a smoking trash can in his hands. Turns out some genius was smoking in the bathroom and threw their cigarette in a trash can full of flammable objects. Still was a pretty funny situation though. I was at running twice weekly lab sessions in the evening. Being more than 10 minutes late to a lab usually earned a 0 grade for the day. So you usually needed a medical note or police report to get out of it. At the end of class, one student who was 20 minutes late came up to me and apologized profusely. He was a quiet, unassuming Chinese guy with glasses and a below average grasp on the English language. He told me that, while he was walking to class, a guy in front of him was shot multiple times by a man in a nearby parked car, which then sped off. He claimed that he rushed over to the man and attempted to attend to his wounds along with another bystander, but that he died before the ambulances arrived. My first thought was, that's ridiculous. But then I noticed his shirt, jeans, and forearms covered in blood. Before I had a chance to really say anything, he beelines it to the exit and leaves. A couple hours later, out of curiosity, I googled Toronto shooting death and sure enough, there's a 14-minute-old article describing a fatal shooting that occurred earlier in the day, not terribly far from campus. The next day, I get an email from the course instructor informing me that the student had submitted a police report to confirm his involvement in the incident. Motherfucker held a man in his arms as he died and still made the effort to come to class. I can't even imagine what that guy was going through as he quietly sat in the back of that room. I work in South Korea and had a 5th grader say he was late because he caught a whale, which is a local euphemism for getting circumcised. When I was in college, a kid showed up nearly an hour late to our final exam. His excuse, I was in jail until about 25 minutes ago. Not a teacher, but my senior year of high school, I drove home on my lunch period because I left my homework on my desk at home. Halfway home, the elderly man in front of me veered off the road and drove into a telephone pole. I stopped to make sure he was okay and for police to show up. He wanted me to help push his car off to the side of the road, but couldn't understand that his axle was snapped in two and buried about 4 inches into the pavement. I overheard the conversation with the police, and he was definitely on some medication and should not have been driving. My teacher was cool about it and actually let me grab lunch from the cafeteria and eat in class too, since I was going to grab lunch on the way back, but couldn't. Not teacher, but student. Kid that was always fucking around rolled into class 30 minutes late totally disheveled. With wild eyes he claimed he fell down the stairs and blacked out. Teacher didn't believe him, but that fucker was covered in dust all over his back so who knows. Had a classmate bring in her fender once. The professor just nodded and continued class without comment. My best excuse. I have poor time management. Teacher said he was ready to yell at me for any excuse I had, but he had nothing for that. Got let off the hook.